Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the For the Founders series, session 3, bonus session. Welcome, welcome. Today we have Rebecca Haydock with us today. Can't speak highly enough of Rebecca. She is the director at the Central Virginia Small Business Development Center. She is also a deal lead and screening committee member, as well as member of the Charlottesville Angel Network. And in her spare time, as little as she has, she is also a judging mentor at the University of Virginia, helping out young founders and beginning startups. So Rebecca, thank you for joining me today, and hopefully we can have a really nice conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting. We're talking about some of my favorite topics.
Good. So really, and Rebecca, just to give you a little background and to refresh the audience's memory, during session 3, we talked primarily about initial financing options for your startup. We didn't really we talked about terms, we talked about what to look out for from a founder's perspective, but we didn't really have a definitional understanding of what the various types were, and that's our purpose today.
Mm-hmm.
Today, Rebecca and I, we're just going to talk about the various forms of funding that you can expect at the initiation or at the inception stage or maybe a few months into your startup. The categories that we're going to discuss are first, non-dilutive funding, which will include grants and various other non-dilutive types of financing. We're going to talk about friends and family investment. We're going to talk about individual angel investment, angel group investment, and family office investment. So with that, Rebecca, can you tell us a little bit about non-dilutive funding and specifically some grants that maybe some folks in the local Charlottesville community, the local Charlottesville startup community in particular, could benefit from?
Sure. Yeah, there actually are quite a few grants out there, and there's quite a few in the state of Virginia. But a lot of people are familiar with the SBIRs and the STTRs, which are federal research grants. Those range from $150,000 to $1 million, and they're often targeted to a specific research need. The difference between the two is the SBIR is a research grant that the company would get. The STTR requires some form of collaboration with a research organization. And those are used by quite a few companies to prove out the technology, de-risk the idea, and sort of, get the ball rolling. And of course, they're grants, so there's no need to pay them back. The state of Virginia also has CIT, which has a grant program. They do some nice small business grants. That is the Center for Innovative Technology. I'm assuming your audience is familiar with them. There's the Virginia Catalyst grant program. That program is for life science projects, and those awards go from $200,000 to $800,000, but they're also done collaboratively. I mentioned the federal grants. There's over 2,000 federal grants. It's grants.gov where you can go and start to look for those, although that's a lot to look through. So, folks in town can help with that. Our office can help weed through that. Another good place to look for grants is FinImpact. They keep track of a lot of the top grants that are available. But just generally speaking, to wrap up the grant conversation, grants are typically available for a specific need or a specific industry or a specific group of people. They tend to be given when there's an identified need or an area of impact where the grantor wants to provide assistance. And we're not even touching on some of the family foundation grants or some of, general foundations across the country. So for a business, if you feel that your business is an area that may be of interest to a corporate funding source or an international funding source, there might be grants available. It just requires a bit of research to find them.
Just to piggyback off of that, one thing that I found very useful is the Center for Nonprofit Excellence has a grant room.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. They have some of the best software and subscriptions that you can literally find out really for reverse due diligence purposes to understand if there's a family foundation, what type of investments are they historically making and how closely does your startup fit to those previous award recipients. Could be very well worth your time. It's free. Again, it's the Center for Nonprofit Excellence, which is near Circa in the city of Charlottesville.
Do you need to be a member to access that, or is that available to everyone?
You may have to be a member, but I believe being a member is free.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, if you can get a grant, if you can get any sort of non-dilutive funding, I mean, that is just absolutely fantastic, especially for maybe pre-seed companies that have not yet fully fleshed out their technology because they need to do more research, which I think is highly relevant for a lot of the startups here in Charlottesville, maybe some that spin out of the University of Virginia.
Mhm.
But I think that's a good definition and some good examples of non-dilutive funding. The next level in the way that I think of this and the order in which the financing that I've described really, in my mind, deal with least complex to the most. And so I think the next level of intensity, if you will, is the family and friends investment round.
Mhm.
And the way that I think of family and friends is, I mean, simply put, you have a high net worth uncle, you have a high net worth friend, and maybe they don't know the first thing about your business. Maybe they don't know too much about in investment, startup investment in general, but they're your friends, and to some point, you're comfortable enough to ask a member of your family for investment. And so a lot of times in my experience, those are some of the best deals from the founder's perspective, because there's some sort of level of trust and love, if you will, that allows for better deal terms and less due diligence and vetting by the investor.
Right. Yeah. I've seen a lot of these, though, ruin family relationships. And so,
Please speak to that.
over the many years. And so, one thing I tell folks, friends and family is great, right? And it really, sometimes it is the only option to get out there and de-risk it. But I tell folks two things. One is money, when you borrow it, is an asset. It's like borrowing somebody's car. And if you break it, you fix it, right? So I advise people, if you're going to take money from friends and family, because those are the most important relationships in your life, really be clear about what your status is, what the risks are, ideally putting something in writing. There are lovely family members that let you borrow money indefinitely. And a lot of the businesses that you and I see, Justin, right, they have friends and family debt on the balance sheet with no terms to repay. That's really great, flexible money. But it's really, my advice to folks is, please think of it as, that's an important relationship. If you are worried, get it on paper, make sure you're really clear. If you're worried about the business really not having been de-risked, right? And it's a situation where, if the business goes bad, it should hurt you more than it hurts the family member. That's a good thing to have in place, because it is on you. They're trusting you with their money, with their asset,
And once you get the money, typically there's not a lot of oversight by that family member who invested in your business. So it would be very worthwhile to update them periodically and not inevitably, knock on wood, this never happens, out of the blue, you run out of money, and that's the next time you talk to them. So friends and family, it's a double-edged sword. It's easier to get the money generally than the next groups of investment that we're talking about. But on the flip side, I think that if things go sideways or haywire for a founder startup with angels or other institutional investment entities, they're going to be there'll be less grief, I think, less personal grief as a consequence of that. No awkward Thanksgiving dinners, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Hey, Justin, I realized I didn't plug in my computer. It's going dark. So I'm just going to plug in while we're talking really quickly.
Sure.
So,
Go ahead.
okay.
So with that, let's move next to the next layer of intensity or level of investor, and this is an individual angel investor.
Mm-hmm.
Difference here between friends and family some differences, although there may be substantial overlap here. An individual angel investor may more likely be within your space than may have more, what I mean by in your space is more investment experience. So the vetting will be probably more substantial than a friends and family round. They may also be within your given industry of your startup, which could be helpful for you because they could be someone that could be strategic with you and help you introduce folks and just be general advisors. So individuals can be very useful on that end. And I think it's probably good just to compare and contrast the two. So I'll define the next level, which is angel groups, which Rebecca is a member of one of the Charlottesville Angel Network. And there, I think when you compare and contrast both, you're both dealing with high net worth individuals that are, quote, accredited investors that want to invest in startups. But I think some of the differences that you'll find is at the individual angel level, as a founder, you'll find it much easier to gain investment through them because you're only going through one channel. When you go through an angel group, and Rebecca is on the screening committee for the Charlottesville Angel Network, I mean, you must receive a ton of investment inquiries, and then you have to vet it, and you have to go through your due diligence checklist. I mean, can you maybe describe briefly, like, what is that like as an angel group organizer and due diligence provider?
So it is highly competitive because you do have a large group of investors. And for the Charlottesville Angel Network, we use a platform called Gust. And people can get on Gust, upload their executive summary, their financials, a pitch deck. But the good thing about that is they can also invite several other angel groups to take a look. And what you're saying is so true. You will often find that it's easier if you work with an individual investor, but your other point is a fantastic point as well. You want to have investors that understand your industry. Sometimes investors become sort of an ad hoc advisory board. They might have ins in the industry or knowledge or connections, which will help you catapult your business. So that's the benefit of talking to a group, or at least letting them get to know you, is they may have individuals that want to invest rather than the whole group investing. But it is a little bit more intimidating, to be honest, right? You've got to suddenly, it could be 40, 70 people looking at this opportunity, and you can, if you're ready for feedback, it's great. It's really a wonderful thing to have that many big brains that are trying to tell you things and help you maybe think through some early hurdles.
Yeah. And I would say you really need to be more organized as an entity, as a business, if you're going to go to an angel group versus an individual. I think an individual will be able to put up with general disorganization if they believe in your vision, and you can easily remedy any mistakes or omissions that you may have in your pitch and your organizational documents. But if you go to an angel group and you're going to be vetted, you're going to go through a due diligence checklist that could be very exhaustive. You're going to pitch in front of, I mean, how many people do you have? 50, 75, 100 people before COVID that would listen to a live pitch. I mean, you have to gain the courage to stand in front of a room and most importantly, regardless of your industry, be persuasive.
Right.
And being persuasive doesn't mean that it's going to be a hockey stick every time. It's just being persuasive that what you are doing is what the future is in whatever industry that you're in. So,
well, and to your point about being buttoned up, right? I find that if somebody presents and there's 3 or more questions that they didn't address in the mind of the person listening, they're done, right? The investor checks out, the group checks out. So it really is important, especially in front of a big group, because when you walk out of the room and they talk about you, if they didn't think of something that maybe you missed, somebody else in the room might. And if it goes in a generally negative direction where they say, well, they didn't answer this question, they didn't answer that question, that could be the end of it.
So moving on to the next round, and then I think discussing all of them together would be worthwhile. The next layer, I would say, of intensity for an initial investment would be a family office. I think the reason for the additional layer of intensity at the family office, now you don't have to have a pitch in front of 50, 75, 100 individual angels at an angel network dinner, if you will. So it's simpler in that sense. I think it's more streamlined that you can work with a family office. I think that the key for family office and the key distinction between that and angel groups and angel individuals, or at least angel groups, is that family offices, you really have to do your reverse due diligence to know and understand what that family office likes to invest in. And if you can get a good sense of what they like to invest in, the types of founders that they like, the terms, if you can figure out the terms that they like to invest in, like that might be different. If you can talk to other founders that are within their portfolio, you may be able to get that information and use it to your advantage. But the point being that it's a much more, because a family office, it's there full time pretty much. I mean, now the family office could have various components of it. It could have a charitable side in addition to an investment side, but there are going to be people there that are there full time. So when we're talking vetting and due diligence, you've got to be papered up, buttoned up very, very tightly, very well, and really do your reverse due diligence. Because if you're in front of an angel group, you don't really know what all their backgrounds are. It's just a general investment desire by a local community of people. You may be able to do the reverse due diligence with individual angels, but I'm assuming an individual angel, they're doing other things full time. When you're talking to a family office, you are talking to, obviously the owner of the family office is doing other things as well, but the family office itself is very focused. And so I think it's just very key that you are also laser focused, because I think the benefits here are pretty good, because the family office is, out of all of these types of early stage investments, the family office should be the one to be able to write you the largest check.
Yeah, and they're going to have great information. If you are in their sweet spot, if you're in the area in which they invest, they know what's going on in that industry. And they know, where other technologies are, where strategics might be that will be helpful to your business. So they're very valuable. And I 100% agree. It is great to be as buttoned up as possible, but while also considering you need to have some level of flexibility, because some family offices won't do a convertible note. They'll only do a priced round, or the other way around, or there's a completely different form of investment strategy that they take. So being able to go in and be buttoned up and understand your industry well, right? If it is indeed their industry, but also being willing to listen and be flexible, because you can learn a lot from a family office if it is the right fit.
Cool. Well, that concludes all the definitional and some anecdotal insights into each section. I think one last thing worth mentioning is, and I think this is really hard and just something to think about, is when you're trying to make your initial ask, you're looking at a runway and you're thinking, how much money do I need to get to this next milestone where I can raise the next amount of money? Potentially, I can go cash flow positive, probably less likely, or some other variable. When you're doing that, and you have this startup and you have this momentum, you have these employees coming in and you're giving them some equity, and you're talking to these friends and families, you're talking to these individual angels and these angel groups and these family offices, and you're writing grants. Rebecca, do you have any advice on how folks can organize and focus and be smart about it and execute well with all this stuff going on? Because that's how it normally is.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's the same as any business. It starts with proper planning, and that's built around a cash flow statement, understanding your projections and what that's going to do to your cash. Because depending on how the cash is coming in, that sometimes determines what your source of capital will be. It can be clearly defined. If there's no commercial revenue for a couple years out, if this is a research organization, then it's very clear. that you've got to go after research money. If you go after equity money, you've got to make a really strong case, because you'll be so diluted by the time you get to commercialization that you're demotivated as the owner. If it's a situation where you will have to have massive inventory, right, of some sort before you receive your return, or, you know, it can be, we could start talking about loans and SBA backed loans. And, you know, if it's international, there's specific money for that, right? So capital is largely dependent on what does your projection look like, not only to get to your minimum viable product, but once that product starts to make it into the marketplace. So my advice is start with a really clear understanding of what the cash requirements are for your business and what they're being used for.
Yeah. I think too, and I think that this is something that I see recurring is, and I'm not an expert on this, it's just I'm seeing it as a lawyer, but I see it is that there's this, I think that there's this FOMO, there's this fear of missing out that you need to build to your prospective investors. And what I mean is, maybe it may behoove you to get those grants first, to get that friends and family money first, so that when you go to the more experienced family offices or angel groups and you say, hey, I've already got 300K in the bank, and then they're like, and then they can say, oh, okay, well, other people think this is a good thing. I don't want to miss out on that. I want to do that.
That's an excellent point. Yes, we always do. We always look to see how much money's already been put in this business. Yeah. And if it's not cash, if it's, say, a software business, how many hours, how many developer hours, because that has financial value, right? Things like that. Or yeah, were there research grants? Are there betas? You know, are you trialing this within the industry? But yeah, you're right. Other sources of capital, absolutely. It's good to see that.
Go for the easiest asks first. You may be compelled to just go right for the biggest check, but I think you would be more persuasive. I think it's all about persuasion at this level. And not necessarily being exact or thinking you'll be exact on your projections and focusing on your projections, because the projections at the end of the day, I think most investors will say, are going to be wrong 99 times out of 100, maybe 100 times out of 100. But
absolutely.
Yeah, but it's the ability to persuade, and I think that FOMO element is critical to building that larger ask to get to the full amount that you need to get to your next milestone. And I think, you know, we're talking about this, and I think it is worth also mentioning very briefly the bridge of institutional debt and SBA backed debt financing, because it's in session 4, we're going to be talking about that. And, okay. And I know that we're going to be talking about institutional debt, but it's from the perspective of that the collateral is accounts receivable and without personal guarantees, which, as you and I know, no business in Charlottesville that I know can get that. The most early stage startups you're going to find, you're going to go through and you're going to go to a bank and you're going to say, I have this startup. Can you know, we think it's worth X. Can we get a loan? And they're not going to give you a loan. They typically need, most banks in Charlottesville, in my opinion, they need some sort of hard asset. They need a house. They need equipment, and even equipment can be difficult to get a loan for. And so that's what the SBA is very useful for, the Small Business Administration Authority.
Yep, administration.
So I've done a few of those loans, and what's nice about that is they can come in and make direct loans, but more commonly they do a guarantee program where a commercial bank, like a mid-sized commercial bank, say here in Charlottesville, is uncomfortable with the collateral of a given company. Well, the company can receive a personal guarantee from the SBA, pay a little more, but to get that guarantee. But with that, it will allow a commercial bank to become comfortable with giving them a loan.
And there are other sources as well, right? There's, you know, community development banks. There's the Virginia Small Business Finance Authority. And of course there's alternative lenders, but they tend to be more expensive.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, I think those are all the initial forms of financing. You may find something a wave of the present or the future with potentially with revenue sharing agreements, which we talk about in more detail in session 4. Could be another alternative to institute somewhere between institutional debt and equity, which I think will gain more traction here with startup valuations generally being lower because of the COVID pandemic. So something to look at. But with that, I hope now we've finally given a holistic picture to all the initial forms of financing for a startup, at least at a very high level, so that you can at least think about it. We've planted the seed today, and maybe for you all, it can lead to something else.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've said this in, the programs that you've done, but Central Virginia is amazing in terms of resources for entrepreneurs to talk to. People like you, people like us, CBIC, CIT, the folks out there who have been down this path and can help let you not gain the scar tissue that we have, right? There's a lot. So it's really great to talk to professionals because everybody wants small business to succeed.
Yeah. Cool. Rebecca, thank you so much. Everyone, thank you for attending and look forward to seeing you virtually, although by a pre-recorded session in session 4. Thank you all very much.
Yeah.